Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Exploring Energy series with the Montana Renewable Energy Association. My name is McKenna Sellers. I'm the Executive Director for MREA, and the Exploring Energy series is a lunchtime presentation held on the first Wednesday of every month, where we tackle energy issues that are impacting Montana and beyond. So we'll explore renewable energy topics in latest technology, trends in development, and connect with experts from across the US and even sometimes globally, working on the future of our energy system. So we've got an excellent presentation here focused on solar permitting and SolarApp. If you're interested in any of our past presentations, some about the Inflation Reduction Act, rural Energy for America funding with USDA rural development, that's all available in our archives, which I will put into the chat. So today I'm very excited to introduce you to our presenters on SolarApp. So I'm going to jump in right away. For housekeeping items, please keep yourself muted during the presentation to avoid background noise. There will be opportunities for Q&A directly following the presentation. And if we don't get to your question, I'd encourage you to drop us a line at the MREA email address and we'll make sure to get you connected. Okay, now on to our esteemed presenters. We have Emily Delecky. She's the Renewable Energy Market and Policy Analyst at NREL, the National Renewable Energy Labs. She's based out of Golden, Colorado. We also have Katie Nissen, PhD candidate in political science and scientific computing with the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Katie's currently working with NREL's Markets and Policy Group in solar energy adoption. And both Katie and Emily work with onboarding AHJs, authorities with jurisdiction, in the adoption of SolarApp. So really thrilled to have them both here. Thank you, Katie and Emily. Additionally, we have Michael Hofkin. He's lead regulatory engineer for codes and regulatory services for UL Solutions. Slight pause to make sure we've got everybody from our waiting room, so you all can be involved, but thank you. So Michael is a master electrician, electrical inspector, and also past chairman of the board for the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, and he's based in Palm, Pennsylvania. Okay, so without further ado, I would love to pass the mic to our presenters. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, McKenna. I'm going to go ahead and take over screen sharing. All right, hopefully we can see those slides.
Looks good, Katie.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So just to start, thank you all for joining us here today to learn more about SolarApp, which stands for the Solar Automated Permitting Process. Also, thank you for having us here today. We're really happy to be here to speak about SolarApp because we think it's pretty darn awesome. So for the first 15 minutes or so here, I'm going to provide an introduction of the tool and its benefits. And then Michael is going to take a couple of minutes to provide a bit of a technical walkthrough with the tool. And then we'll come back to me and talk about some resources for next steps with engaging with SolarApp. And then the time will be yours for questions and answers. So without further ado, so to start, for just a little bit of background, the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, is one of 17 national labs founded and funded by the U.S. Department of Energy to tackle the critical scientific challenges of our time. Specifically, NREL focuses on finding creative answers to today's energy challenges and has decades of focused leadership in clean energy research, development, and deployment. For SolarApp specifically, NREL has collaborated with a team of experts that are shown on the left-hand side of the slide here to develop an online permitting platform that will automate rooftop solar plan review and produce code-compliant approvals instantly. We worked with solar industry groups, code bodies like the ICC, the building safety community, environmental organizations, and of course, local governments to develop SolarApp. The platform is entirely free for jurisdictions to adopt, and we consider it a driver of economic development for local governments. Our data shows that economic growth compounds once permitting moves to an all-online system and grows even more so once that process incorporates instantaneous permit approvals. As just one example, once the city of San Jose took the step to automate their PV approvals, they experienced a 6-fold increase in growth. The resulting economic growth from automated permitting creates an infusion of local resources and generates a greater amount of government revenue for less effort. Additionally, SolarApp is meant to make online automated permit processing more accessible. SolarApp is available 24/7, which means that permits can be issued at any time instantaneously, and solar installations can proceed without any delays. The other thing that we'd like to mention on this slide is that SolarApp adoption has been supported by the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So given conversations that we've had with dozens of local governments at this point, we've noticed the trend that rooftop solar projects tend to have really consistent designs. So residential rooftop PV projects with one module and one inverter are really common, easy to approve, and often take no more than an hour to actually review. But just because of the sheer volume of applications, they often end up sitting in a queue before they actually get reviewed. Because of the commonalities across these designs, we estimate that SolarApp can cover 70 to 80% of the permits that are submitted for solar and approve them without any delays. This slide that I have up here summarizes the systems that are compatible with SolarApp at this time. So currently SolarApp is focused on residential PV and is compatible with the 2017 and 2020 NEC and the 2018 and 2021 IBC and IRC. Also shown here on the slide are the features that we are planning to include in SolarApp. So SolarApp is able to instantly approve applications for PV plus storage projects, and we are actively piloting this feature in the vast majority of our current jurisdictions. SolarApp is going to be continuously updated based on new codes, and will continue to add new technologies to our eligibility portfolio. In the future, SolarApp is going to be able to approve applications for EV chargers and hopefully way more. Countrywide, there's also been an abundance of interest in SolarApp. So currently we have over 100 jurisdictions who have fully adopted or are piloting SolarApp right now. We've had widespread adoption across the state of California, and we've also had jurisdictions from across the country adopt, including Oro Valley, Arizona, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Harrisonburg, Virginia, Denver, Colorado, Tiffin, Iowa, Montgomery County, Maryland, and Houston, Texas. We are just all over at this point. And many more jurisdictions are working through the onboarding process and are in discussions about launching a pilot by the end of this year. Although SolarApp is not yet adopted across all states, there has been significant interest from installers and jurisdictions who want to use the tool across the country. Just to give some insights into the impact that SolarApp can have for a local government, we've highlighted this case study out of Tucson, Arizona, which was one of our first jurisdictions to pilot and then fully adopt SolarApp. So since piloting, Tucson has successfully issued over 5,000 permits using SolarApp, allowing over 30,000 kilowatt hours of residential solar to be installed locally. Utilizing SolarApp has allowed their average permit process time to go from 4 weeks down to instantaneous, and has saved their permitting and building staff over 5,000 hours. This slide displays some of the results from all 128 of the communities that have been piloting or have fully adopted SolarApp. So to date, SolarApp has issued over 27,000 permits across those communities, which includes over 5,000 revisions. And we've also issued more than 2,400 permits across 105 jurisdictions through our PV plus storage pilots. Among those communities, we've seen no time added whatsoever to inspections of PV systems in the field. And speaking of inspections, projects permitted through SolarApp were installed and inspected 13 days faster on average than projects that were using a traditional process. And all of this is made possible through SolarApp's ability to provide instantaneous review, reducing average permit review time to less than 1 day and saving AHJ staff over 25,000 hours. Additionally, SolarApp projects have been about 29% less likely to fail inspections than traditional projects because it's so good at catching little errors and issues that might come up as an installer is inputting the project. Also, as you can see down in the lower right-hand corner here, the median business days for permit review are all less than 1 day for jurisdictions that are using SolarApp. And this is especially advantageous if you're a community looking to achieve SolSmart Gold or Platinum designations. So now let's talk about what SolarApp actually does. This slide gives a really high-level overview of the process that contractors will actually follow in SolarApp. So first, the installer is going to input project information and spend about 15 minutes or so moving through fire, structural, electrical, and workers' comp questions. There's about 50 questions in total to SolarApp. Across all of these forms, our system is automating compliance checks that you or your staff would otherwise have to do yourselves visually. Second, SolarApp completes its compliance checks. So if an installer inputs anything that is non-compliant, the system will give them live feedback, guiding them towards a compliant answer. Because it's automated, it can very quickly catch code issues, typos, and other sorts of errors. It's designed to be responsive, so it's going to instantly return corrections and provide the installer guidance for getting a correct answer in that input field. And this eases the process that would otherwise require a back and forth between a local office and an installer. Because of this, SolarApp can help limit the amount of questions that a jurisdiction is getting on basic applications, especially from new installers. And this allows permit technicians to focus their efforts on complicated permits for solar rather than your sort of typical PV residential systems. And then third, if the contractor does complete a compliant application, they'll pay their SolarApp administrative fee and your permitting fee. And once the payment is complete, the permit is instantly issued with the inspection checklist and other content for your inspection team to verify out in the field. And again, this is all through a no-touch process that allows for 24/7 instant permits. Once a project has successfully been submitted by the contractor, SolarApp returns the approval documents, including an inspection checklist for that project, which is shown on the left-hand side of the screen here. The inspection checklist includes all of the relevant parts of the approved system for an inspector to verify out in the field, and all inspection checklists here also have a QR code in the bottom left-hand corner that can be scanned to access the most up-to-date project plans. Just as a technical note on the inspection checklist, there are no line diagrams. So instead, SolarApp takes all of the information that would normally be in a line diagram and translates it into a checklist of items for the inspector to use in the field. And the last thing that I'll say on inspections is that we also have 2 IREC trainings that inspectors will take on how to inspect SolarApp approved systems using the checklist. These IREC trainings count for continuing education credit, and they only take about an hour to complete. Once an inspector has completed these trainings, they'll be ready to inspect both SolarApp approved PV and PV plus storage systems in the field. So SolarApp is also adaptable, and we do offer 2 different options to best meet the needs of a jurisdiction. So the first option that's shown in the top pathway on the slide here is what we're calling the standalone model. So this is going to be for jurisdictions who currently only accept applications via email, mail, person. So the standalone model will start with the installer inputting their projects and paying our $25 administrative fee in SolarApp. The contractor then pays the city or county's fees in SolarApp using Stripe. The project approval documents are then stored in SolarApp for easy future access. And finally, the permit gets issued instantly. And all permits and inspection documents are sent to both the installer and the jurisdiction. The second option, which is shown in the lower pathway on this slide, is what we call the integration model. And this is going to be for jurisdictions who are already using some type of online permitting tool, such as Acela, eTrackIt, EnerGov, etc. This method will also start with the installer inputting their project and paying our $25 administrative fee in SolarApp. They will then receive the approval documents for the system. The installer is now redirected back into the existing government system where they can upload those approval documents for the project directly into the government software system, and there's where they'll pay any city or county permitting fees. We just want to note that SolarApp does not currently have an API, so this information transfer between SolarApp and the existing government system does have to be done manually by an installer. We are working with some of these software providers to develop this automated communication. It's just not something that's available at this moment in time. But after the installer has completed the transfer from SolarApp to the existing system, their system is now able to instantly issue a permit. And so at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he's going to talk a little bit about the technical details of the tool.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, McKenna, for the wonderful introduction. Share my screen here. And are we seeing my SolarApp projects page?
Yep,
Looks good.
Very good. So I am working on a demo server. So if you adopt SolarApp and you do see this page and it looks different, please forgive us, but our demo server is slightly different from the live server. Everybody's going to start by coming over to the new project button and entering a valid address. The software begins its automated review process right then and there. If an address is entered that's outside of the jurisdiction, you won't be able to go any further. So you won't accidentally be entering a solar permit from the county next door, the city next door, or a suburb or anything of that nature. So what I have here is a demo project that I'll just walk us through so you can see what this will be like for the contractor. And at the end, I'll explain and show some of the things that are available for the inspector in the field. So here we have the scope of work, name of the project, and we come to our first affirmation box. And if this box is not checked, if I go to the bottom of the page and try and proceed, the software stops me. I have to attest that the homeowner's information is correct and that I've been given the right to install on their property. The next thing that happens is we go through the eligibility checklist, and I'll swing over a larger version of this so everybody can see it. There we go. So solar app permits have to be for new systems only. We cannot currently accept a addition to an existing system. We're going to obviously confirm that the codes are set up properly for your jurisdiction. This is only for single phase 240 volt systems. These projects can only be permitted for 1 and 2 family dwellings. We do not limit the size of the solar system. We do limit the size of the service that you can connect to. So it can be nothing larger than a 400 amp service, no bus bar larger than 225 amperes, and no overcurrent device greater than 225 amperes on the service disconnects. You're only permitted one type of module. There's only, well, there's our alert. Sorry about that. Nationwide test of the emergency alert system. Many of you may have just gotten an alert as well. There is no trenching permitted. If you have a detached structure, there has to be electricity there for you to connect the solar to, or you can run an aerial line to that building, but any underground work would have to go through the normal process. So it's not that you can't have the permit, you just can't have the automated permit. You have to go to the counter and have a human being do the plan review. For those of you who are wondering, I am a former plan reviewer. I spent 23 years as one. I understand there might be trepidation about there's no plans. The simple truth of the matter is we have over 20,000 permits issued with no plans. And what this software does is take those plans and just convert all of the information that you would have gotten by looking at them with your eyes and gleaning information off the plan into a series of text questions. This really can be done without a set of drawings. It's not a problem. We do not permit ground-mounted systems. You cannot put solar on a non-permanent structure or carport or anything like that. You cannot do an alteration or upgrade to the structure. If you're putting an addition and you want to have solar on it, that's an over-the-counter permit. We are strictly on the existing building. And it has to be a previously permitted structure. If somebody built a barn or a detached garage or something illegally 5 years ago, we are not going to allow them to put a solar system up on the unpermitted structure. And again, we have 3 attestations here. If I don't hit any of them, the software will stop me and we hit the next button. And now the software is confirming that all the inputs that I put in are indeed correct and within parameters of SolarApp. The next thing that happens is the fire terms are set forward and you have to review the fire bulletin and hit the attestation box. See where I have the fire bulletin that I can show you guys. There it is. So this fire bulletin goes through the disconnecting means. If you have an energy storage system, the parameters that are there. Please note that the code sections are on the fire bulletin. So if you have a question about something, you can go in and it tells you to go to the National Electrical Code 706-15B. The next thing we go through is the signs of the placards that are required. And this does a very nice job of actually giving us the information that's needed. And it also gives you the limits in the IRC, 80 kilowatt hours only and what have you. The fire classification is important. We need to make sure that the racking and module system have a fire classification that matches the roof fire classification. There are example labels given in the fire bulletin. This is one that's always interesting to people. This says tri power source. Well, why tri? Well, if you're going to have a utility service, a PV system, and a battery system, you have 3 sources of power, and the labeling must reflect that on the final project. Just some more examples of the labels that may end up going in. We always get questions from the fire services. What are we doing about access to the roof and setbacks from the ridge and everything else? That is also covered here. And again, all of this information is not only in the application process, it's printed in the final approval documents. So you have it available in PDF form to refer to at any time. The jurisdiction has it, the installer has it, and the inspector has access to it through the jurisdiction. One of the big things that comes up is the ridge setback. The IRC does permit only 18 inches of ridge setback if we are not covering more than 33% of the roof or more than 66% of the roof if it has a sprinkler system. If you're over 33% and or over 66% with sprinklers, then you need the 36-inch setback from the roof. And again, we want to make sure any egress windows have a path out so we don't put solar panels in the way of an egress path. say from a side window as shown on the right-hand side here. And we'll go back to the application. You can see that we have to, again, hit the affirmation box. We have 2 questions here. Is there a sprinkler? And what is the square footage of the roof? And you might have to train your contractors a little bit. A lot of times they put the square footage of the home there, and that throws the numbers off a little bit because we're doing a calculation based on the size of the solar panels. What percentage of the roof have we covered? Once again, we hit the next button. The software thinks about it, trying to confirm that indeed all of the answers are correct. I want to point out to you on this page now, we're going to look at some of the structural things. On the right-hand side, we have these wonderful little bubble eyes. And the bubble eyes, if you have a question about what is the software trying to get from you, there's a little tip here for you to try and guide you towards the correct answer. For those of you concerned about the weight of the system and will the structure hold it up, your typical roof is set up for 20 pounds of live load. We've taken a very conservative approach. We allow for 4 pounds of dead load on the solar system. So you're trading 20 pounds of live load for 4 pounds of dead load. You can't walk on solar panels. So it should be no problem as far as if the structure can hold the existing roof up and it has its 20 pounds of live load rating, should be no problem trading that out to the solar system. We then ask a series of questions, and wherever possible, we try and put a drop-down list in. And what this prevents is typos, as Katie mentioned. There are fat finger mistakes that happen. When a mistake happens on an application and somebody puts in 11 instead of 110, it can cause the delay in the permitting being issued. So wherever possible, we try and have a drop-down list available so that there are no errors in the input as far as a typo or that things of that nature. Once again, we have this wonderful bubble here that gives us a little bit of information to help us with this particular input. If you're really stuck, you can always go down to the blue question mark in the bottom right corner, and there you can send an email to the team, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible on that. Once again, we see a drop-down list. This one's rather extensive because there are many, many different types of approved roof coverings that you can add solar to. And we just continue to add these inputs into the system. We take a look at, we're going to ask questions about the roof framing and things of that nature. And are there ceiling joists and things like that? Finally, we hit the next button. Once again, the software thinks about it. As Katie mentioned, we're getting live feedback here. So if you put in a bad input, the system will try and stop you and correct you if it's possible. There are some inputs that you can't get around. If there's an existing solar system, we have a question here that says, is there an existing solar system? If you hit yes, it stops you right there and says you can't do a SolarApp permit. Again, not that you can't have the permit, you just have to go through the traditional process. Here they're going to input the information about the inverters, the modules, who makes them, what model number. Please upload a data sheet so that we have that available for reference. How many are you putting in? What's their fire rating? And we can even accommodate the bifacial modules. Once again, this wonderful little bubble eye is available for additional information. Next, we input the information needed about the racking system. Do we have a rapid shutdown system, and is it tested to work in combination? If I hit no here, that's it. End of permit. You cannot get a SolarApp permit if you don't have converters and inverters that are tested together. So the software is providing instant feedback and saying, no, you're going to have to go through a traditional process and make sure we review why you don't have this test in place. The next thing we do is go through some installation details. So is there an existing interactive power production source? Yeah, there is. I already have a battery system. Guess what? You can't do that through SolarApp. So the system stops you again. We have constant, immediate feedback to make sure that you're getting a completed project that falls within the automated process. This is not software that's going to be designed to ever do a commercial, or in its current form anyway, to do a commercial installation of any kind. We're not going to do anything larger than a 1 or 2 family permit. The idea here is that these small projects on 1 and 2 family dwellings are very cookie cutter. They have very similar parameters. And for that reason, we're able to automate the process because they all fit in a nice little bucket together. Next thing we ask is about the wiring and the conduits and the size of the equipment grounding conductors. We're going to ask about the inverter inputs on the DC side. Once again, we got a wonderful bubble here that gives us information. Are there more than 2 PV module string series combined in parallel? Yes, I'm going to do 3 strings. No, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to do that through SolarApp. That's too complicated of a job. We're going to make sure that we do a full plan review by a person on that project. So again, immediate feedback. Now we take a look at the inverter on the output side for the AC, and we're going to ask questions about the overcurrent protection. What about the point of connection? Are you making a line side tap? Are you doing the 120% rule on a backfed breaker? Are you connecting into a sub panel? Are you intercepting a feeder? Whatever the NEC permits in the way of this interconnection, it's in the SolarApp software. You just have to answer the questions depending on what type of system you're putting in. This is interesting here. What is the bus bar quantity? We want information about the panels that are involved in the job. So we have a main service panel, typically that's on every project, but you might have a sub panel, you might have an emergency backup panel, you might have 2 sub panels. So if they're involved with the solar installation, we're going to want to know what size are they, what overcurrent protection do they have, and will the solar system legally backfeed into them or connect to them to make sure that we have a proper installation. It looks like a very easy set of questions and answers here. I can assure you I am on the UL audit team. We are continually auditing the permits to make sure that the software is performing as advertised. And there are some really powerful algorithms working in the background here to make sure that we have a product that's not issuing bad permits. So this will be the details about the 1 bus bar that I have on this job. And once again, I hit next. If by any chance there's a missing input or a bad input, the software would say you can't go any further, you need to correct this or what have you. Finally, we ask about workers' compensation, and you would hit the preview project button, and what pops up at that point will be the approval documents. So the approval documents have the site address, scope of work. This approval ID number is unique to this job, so it will travel with the job forever. And what begins now is the inspection checklist. The inspection checklist, if you note, it's 31 pages total here. The inspection checklist is only the first 3 to 5 pages, depending on the complexity of the installation. So I want to say that again. It's not a 31-page inspection checklist. It's a 3 to 5 page checklist. And most of these things, you might not even physically check them off. Is there an existing main panel? Yeah, I saw that with my eyes. Does it have a 225 amp bus bar with a 200 amp main? Yes, I saw that with my eyes. Boom, 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 3 check marks. It literally takes a few seconds as you're looking at the main panel to knock out these checkpoints and make sure that what the contractor told us is going in is what is actually on the site. SolarApp does not work without the inspection checklist because this checklist is not generic. It is a checklist that is specific to this project, and it's based on the inputs that the contractor gives us. If the contractor told us they were going to use Hanwha solar cells and they ended up going with CMAs, that's a fail. Write your violation and walk away. The contractor is not permitted to do that. They can change their input on the panel or on the application form. So if at 10 o'clock at night, they're done with the kids' baseball game and dinner's over and they sit down and they realize, oh my God, they're out of stock on the Hanwha panels. They're going to have to ship me a different manufacturer's panels. They can go right in the SolarApp and make that change in real time. The approval documents are instantly updated and a revised set is sent over to the municipality. SolarApp allows 2 amendments without charging an additional fee. Some jurisdictions do not. They charge an additional fee for every amendment. If that's the case, during the onboarding process, we would set you up with that feature so that they can amend with us twice for nothing, but then they have to go over and pay your fee before the permit is updated. So that's not a problem. We are not looking in any way to take away revenue if that's how it's generated. So the inspection checklist continues, and on this particular job, I believe it's 3 pages. And again, if you have anything that doesn't match up, then something went wrong along the way. As Katie mentioned, on the bottom left side of each page is a unique QR code This QR code is again unique to this project. So if the inspector printed paperwork at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, the contractor made a change Wednesday night, the inspector shows up Thursday and it doesn't match anymore, anybody can scan the QR code and get to the most recent version of the documents immediately so that we don't have any delays in the inspection. The whole idea here is to issue the permit, do a good installation, have a proper and thorough inspection, and let's get the solar installed. As I mentioned, the entire fire bulletin that I've already reviewed with you is reprinted in the approval documents. So all the labels are here, all of the fire egress lines are here, and then we go to the general inputs. This is the information that the contractor gave to us. So these things are all here and available to be checked. And again, what's the square feet of the array? What's the size of the roof? What percentage of the roof is covered? Because that matters with the IRC rules. Here are the structural details. Here's the framing details, and you'll notice that there are charts provided in this approval document to help everybody along. It's just some of the more common charts that you'll find in the building code and the electrical code. Here we have, again, more structural information. What's your snow load? Again, the snow load for your community is set up during your onboarding process. Is the roof in good condition? Again, this is an attestation. The contractor says, yes, it is. If you walk out on the job and the roof is missing shingles and it looks like it has holes in it, they have lied to us, write your violation, and move on. All of the electrical details are now given. So inverters, modules, DC to DC converters, the battery system, if there is one, what is the interface device for if there's going to be a backup, and the module fire rating types, what kind of roof is it? Are we doing a flat, it's a flush mount system or a tilt up system? We're now asking about all the important things regarding the electrical. Your conduits, your conductors, are the conduits at least 7/8 of an inch above the roof? Do we have 75-degree rated terminals? What is the maximum number of modules in a DC series string? SolarApp does not permit more than 10. What kind of DC to DC converter do we have? What's the current on that unit? What is the PV wire size? What is the equipment grounding conductor size? And again, here we have NEC table 31015C1 and 15B2 and 15B16. This is where this information came from. We give you the wire sizes that are needed based on the number of current carrying conductors in a given raceway. What is the overcurrent protection? Some of the calculations are provided here. How many conductors are you putting in the raceway? And we continue through the process. Now we talk about the electrical bus bars. Main service panel. Is it a combiner panel? No, it isn't. Is it existing? Yes, it is. What is it? It's the main service panel. If you look at the bottom of this, you'll see that they're using the 120% rule as permitted by the NEC. The bus bar and overcurrent protected device rating are given to you. And again, this information is given to the contractor and sent to the jurisdiction and is always available online at SolarApp through the QR code. So there should be no problem with obtaining and using this documentation. Finally, we go through some final information about the point of connection. And then we ask about are we doing a main panel upgrade? You are permitted to do that through SolarApp. You can also do a main breaker derate. If you reduce the size of that main breaker, you can actually connect a larger solar system through a backfeed method in a panel. Sometimes that happens, and the SolarApp software does recognize that installation. Workers' comp is at the end here. And finally, the entire eligibility checklist is reprinted again for everybody's convenience. So if you walk onto the job and there's a 600 amp service at a mansion and the contractor says, please inspect, you say, I can't. You lied to us. SolarApp doesn't allow anything bigger than a 400 amp. The permit's not valid. Write your violation and move on. Finally, I want to close with this. We've never had it happen, but should you have a installer who is trying to game the system and creating a situation where they're lying continuously, one job after another, and they're providing false information, we can kick them out of the system. And the use of SolarApp is a privilege, not a right. So if you do not follow the rules and you're a repeat offender any jurisdiction can contact SolarApp and say, remove this installer from my list of approved installers, and they will always have to go over the counter or your traditional method for obtaining their permit. This is a big hammer. This hurts them where they live and breathe, because SolarApp allows them to sell the system and install the system much more quickly, hopefully leading to more installed systems per year. By taking away the ability to have an instant permit, you're punching them right in the wallet. As I said, we haven't had this problem yet, but it is available should we need it. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to McKenna, I think, so that we can have ourselves a question and answer session.
I think I'm actually hopping in for just a few more slides if I can share screen.
Yep.
Oh, Emily, I'm sorry. You're right. You are. Let me stop my screen share.
No problem. Thank you, Michael.
Awesome. I will share. Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. Excellent as usual. So just to get back and talk about the steps to adopting SolarApp. So if this is interesting to you, either as a jurisdiction or an installer, or another type of advocate who might want a jurisdiction to adopt this tool, this slide walks through exactly what the process of adopting SolarApp is going to look like, and it's overall going to be a 4-step process. So the first thing that we need to do is select the right model of SolarApp for a jurisdiction. So if you remember what I talked about a few minutes ago, this is either going to be the integration or standalone versions reviewed on the previous slide. So if jurisdiction is currently accepting permits only in person or via email or in the mail, then they'll go with a standalone version, which involves setting up a Stripe account. And then if you have an existing government software system, you'll go with the integration model. The next step after you've selected your system is to input local settings for a jurisdiction. So this includes things like permitting contacts, wind speed, snow load, temperature variables, model code years, and a few other pieces that our staff at NREL and UL can help you with. And these sorts of variables are going to be what's underpinning all of this stuff that's doing compliance checks in the background that Michael was just showing you. So these are really important for individualizing SolarApp to your jurisdiction. The next thing that we'll do is set up an instant workflow. So if a jurisdiction is moving forward with the standalone model, this step includes setting up permit payments in SolarApp through Stripe. And then if a jurisdiction is moving forward with the integration model, then you would need to set up an instant workflow in your government software. And we have loads of resources and folks who are knowledgeable about this who can help you set up your existing government software to be compatible with SolarApp. And then finally, it would be time to launch. And this involves inviting typically about 4 installers that we have that we work with regularly and who are really familiar with SolarApp to use your jurisdiction SolarApp for permitting to start and run a pilot if necessary. And then finally, you can open up SolarApp to all installers in your area. Although more and more commonly, we have jurisdictions who feel comfortable enough that they're just going straight to open pilots or full adoption where all installers in their area can use the tool, because we've gotten a lot of feedback and sort of refined it pretty well. So the last thing I'll say before we open it up to Q&A is just share some resources on this slide here. So this first link, if you're a jurisdiction who wants to get started with SolarApp, this first link is for you. And so this is where you'll start your registration at SolarApp. You'll go here, start making an account, start putting in those different variables that I was talking about. And this is really the first step in kicking off the process to adopt SolarApp. The second resource that we have here is our team email. So if you have any follow-up questions or any concerns at any point in the process that we can help you with, and you don't know who to direct your questions to, feel free to email this email address and we will get you to the right person to talk to. I'll also note that we've recently developed some resources for installers who would like to advocate for SolarApp to jurisdictions that they operate in. And so if you would like some of the resources that we have, feel free to email us through this email as well. And we can get you set up with the resources to let your jurisdiction know that you'd like them to use SolarApp. And then finally, we have these frequently asked questions pages that are sort of depending upon what kind of model you would be looking at for going forward with SolarApp. So these are just some resources that we have, some walkthrough guides on how to do the setup process and so on and so forth. We also have a bunch of other frequently asked questions pages that you can access via these links that cover just about anything that you would want to know about SolarApp. So I will leave these up on the screen if that's okay, and we can move to Q&A.
That sounds great. And thank you, Katie and Emily and Michael. Really, really excellent content here. So at this point in the presentation, we're opening the floor to questions. If you'd like to either unmute yourself, introduce, and ask your question of our speakers here in the room, or if you'd like to put your questions in the Q&A, we'll start navigating those right now. So Denise Roth-Barber asks, how do local governments decide to use SolarApp or other apps like this? And I think that Katie gave a really good step-by-step at the conclusion of the presentation here. So I think we've got that one covered. Then Kylie asks about submitting, can SolarApp apply for homes that are under current construction? That could be a question for Michael. I know that you had said it has to be already permitted structures. So how might that apply with new construction?
That's correct. At this time, we do not issue permits for new construction. The SolarApp is on an existing building only. The building doesn't have to exist for years. It could be, if you have a final building permit on your building and a week later you want to do a SolarApp permit, that's an existing building. It's just we don't have a way to tie in through the rather rigorous process that's involved with the zoning and permitting of a brand new building. So rather than try and complicate things, we've stayed away from that at this point.
Thank you. Another question in the chat here from Brad. Are you finding that as far as the adoption rates and growth for SolarApp development, is that motivated from the installer side or AHJs or both?
Gosh, I feel like the cop-out answer is both.
Yeah, I'll agree with Katie on that one. We definitely get it from both. Some jurisdictions are really interested. They have a huge influx of these solar permits coming through, or even for jurisdictions that don't have this huge influx, maybe they're less familiar with solar and solar is just becoming more popular in their jurisdiction. So it's a little bit helpful to have someone to assist with these permits that they're less familiar with. But I will say for jurisdictions with the huge influx already, we're able to take these fairly basic permits off their plate so they can focus on the really technical ones. All of that being said, installers have been huge advocates for us. Of course, installers love to get that permit in their hands right away. It's a huge bonus for them. So we've seen a lot of advocacy from that side, and that's helped get maybe, let's say, some of our more stubborn jurisdictions who aren't as excited about change. Installers have really helped motivate change in some jurisdictions like that.
Oh, I'll add to that if I could.
Yeah, please.
If your jurisdiction is getting one solar application a week, that's fine. You're not backed up with them, hopefully, and then the permits are being issued in a timely manner. Sooner rather than later, you're going to get 12 applications dropped off at the same time. Somebody's going to walk into a neighborhood with a sales force and they're going to sell a bunch of solar. And now you have 12 hours of plan review. That's a day and a half for one person. And that's a day and a half that person does nothing else besides these 12 solar plan reviews. And that could potentially slow up the plan review on other more technically involved projects. By having this automated process, you lose no revenue. All you do is have an automated instant permit process that benefits the solar industry, our environment, and everything else. And there's no downside for you. Your money's coming in, your permits are being issued, your inspectors are still looking at all of the installs. You can send your electrical inspector, your building inspector, your fire inspector. That all of this can be set up during the onboarding process. So why not do this now rather than waiting until solar becomes a huge thing and suddenly you find yourself against the wall and backed up and now people aren't getting permits in a reasonable amount of time.
Just to piggyback off of that again, and also kind of address, I think, two questions that I saw come in the chat. So just to be clear, SolarApp is free for jurisdictions to adopt. There is also no contract that we're going to lock you into. There is no, like, you have to agree to use us for 2 years or something like that. The only thing you have to agree to is like our terms of service or whatever, like the standard, like boilerplate, check it. But nothing that's like, you have to sign this contract to use SolarApp for 2 years. If you decide that you, adopt it, and you hate it or something, we don't think that's going to happen. It has not happened. But if you were to decide that, you're free to just stop using it. And also it exists alongside your current permitting system. Not necessarily, it won't be replacing it because you're always going to have that 10, 20, 30%, depending on where you are, of permits that SolarApp isn't going to cover because of like weird different variables. So it's going to exist alongside your current permitting system. So if you decide to go off SolarApp, you also don't have to like do this hard process of undoing your adoption. It's just, you're taking away sort of this like nice fast track channel. But yeah, there's no cost to jurisdictions, no like one-time setup fee or anything, no ongoing fee. The only fees that we charge are the $25 that's charged to the contractor per project for that instantaneous permit, but for the jurisdiction, nada.
Yep. And I'll add to what Katie said, that $25 per permit that installers are paying, they're usually very happy to pay that because they get that permit in their hands right away. And as Katie likes to say, that's what helps us keep the lights on. That's what's going to help us continue to incorporate new technologies, stay up to date with code updates and things of that nature, but it will always be free for jurisdictions. Sometimes we get the question like, what's the catch? There really isn't one. This tool was developed by the federal government, and we developed this tool because we want to help the solar industry. We want to help local jurisdictions. Like truly, there is no catch for jurisdictions. This is just to help. And I saw an additional question in the chat that asked if we have any experience working with tribes. And I will mention we don't to date, but that does not mean that we can't. We're very open to these conversations, and I really encourage you to reach out to our team email there. We're happy to have that conversation and see what other nuances are there that we can help address. And I guess one last thing to help answer that question of like, what is the price for local jurisdictions? Of course, as Katie just said, absolutely zero. Really, the only cost is it is going to cost a couple hours of your staff time just to help get it set up on your end. But once it's up and running, like there's no cost at all from our end. It's just going to take a few hours of your staff time.
We have a colleague who likes to say that SolarApp should be the easiest project that your staff has to deal with. It should be the easiest thing on your plate. We have lots of resources available for you, including all of us. So it's not an onerous process for setup either.
Question for the whole team, probably the three of you, as far as use cases. I think that Katie, you hit a really key point that the SolarApp automated product does not replace current permitting systems. It's more of a supplemental tool. What have you seen for use cases, especially those that are AHJs or areas that are maybe 50,000 to 80,000 in population? What are you seeing as far as that distinction or percentage between what percentage is going through SolarApp and what percentage is still going through that standard permitting review?
Katie, I can cover that one if you'd like. McKenna, I don't have an answer broken up by population of city, but I can tell you that on average, we are seeing anywhere between 60 to 90% of permits going through SolarApp. So I know that's a pretty big range, but either way, we're still covering more than half of the solar permits coming through. And I will also mention, just because this concern sometimes comes up of, are we taking away a permit tech's job? And I can confidently tell you the answer is no. There are so many permits coming through that even if these basic permits are taking off a permit tech's plate, they're still going to have those more complicated permits to focus on. We're really just opening up their time and availability to focus on those complicated permits that really need their attention.
I saw a question come in the chat that we can go to next. Okay, so the one that came in, are there resources / advice for onboarding jurisdictions who are new to the solar permitting world? Yes, we have two answers to that. Both these resources that I've listed on the screen here, these are really good places to start, especially that registration one. Under general, it walks you through the registration process in SolarApp pretty much from end to end. So that's really helpful for getting started. But if you have more sort of like specific questions, one tool that we have available for you is we hold bi-weekly office hours. So we hold office hours every other week that you can come to us at any point in the process, really. If you haven't started registration yet, up until the point that, you're in adoption or whatever, you can come at any point. We break you into rooms with our subject matter experts, and you get sort of a one-on-one or, two-on-one. Sometimes we pair similar jurisdictions. And that's your time to ask questions, any questions that have come up about, what would it look like for your jurisdiction specifically to adopt SolarApp? If you come across a specific challenge, et cetera, et cetera. So those are available bi-weekly, and I'm going to put a link in the chat right now where you can register for those. And we're always happy to have new faces.
And I'm one of the people, along with Katie and Emily, we sit in on those. So you're getting the expertise of all the subject matter experts, the people who are familiar with the onboarding, the people who are familiar with the plan review process. Those of us, I'm a former contractor as well as electrical inspector, so I've been kind of on both sides of the evil, if you will. So we're here and we have answers and information for you, and all of these resources are at no charge, as is the software. So I invite you to please join us for office hours. There is a little bit longer version of this demonstration that's available, and we hold the demonstrations twice a month, I believe. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. On weeks that we're not having office hours, we hold demos that are similar, but yes, longer than this one in terms of the technical walkthrough.
And
if
I'll
you
just
see, if you see a
go
demo,
ahead, Michael.
if you see a demo and you're like, man, there's too much information, come to another one. I think we have one on a Tuesday and then 2 weeks later on a Thursday. Just keep coming and looking at the demos. Join us for the office hours in between the demos. You don't have to ask any questions, but you're going to listen to the questions and answers that are being asked from other jurisdictions that are in different phases of the adoption process. Some of them haven't even registered. Some of them registered, but they're setting up their IT portion. Some of them are getting ready to launch their pilot. So all of this information, this live conversation, is available to you to really try and make this as easy a process as possible.
Please do feel free to share these links with anybody in your team. If you attend a demo, but you want other folks on your team to attend a demo, please feel free to send them our way. We'd be happy to have them there. Same with office hours. We work with people out of finance departments all the time. Different factions who have to sort of IT departments, different factions who have to work together to bring this project to fruition. So we are happy to speak with anybody. We've got a variety of SMEs who are ready to speak the lingo on whichever part you're having issues with.
And I'll just reiterate something that Katie mentioned during her presentation. I know a lot of folks on this call today are maybe not jurisdictions, but maybe fall more into the advocate range. And we do have resources developed if you're just someone who wants to see one of your local jurisdictions adopt. So I'd still encourage you to reach out to this team email, and we have resources that you can share with your local jurisdiction to let them know about these demos and office hours as well.
So I have a kind of hypothetical question just to touch on real quick. Years ago, the expedited permit process that NREL had done was valuable, and this is certainly building upon it, and it's a great opportunity. Do you feel as though the process that the installer goes through in a growing industry, you have newer installers entering the field, code changes, etc. Are you seeing that that's an educational process on the installer side and helping to train the installer as they go through the process so that they are more up to code, etc., by the time it gets to AHJs?
Such a great question, Brad. I'll start, and I have a feeling Michael might want to add a little bit to what I have to say. But we have developed trainings, and that has been hugely helpful. We have developed trainings for installers on both PV alone as well as PV plus solar projects. Those are done through IREC. And we also have trainings for the jurisdictional side, because that educational component isn't just for installers, right? And sometimes jurisdictions need that educational component too. So we also have trainings developed for the jurisdiction and inspectors that come with continuing education credits. So that's at least part of how we've tried to help kind of bridge that educational gap and just make it easier for anyone who wants to use the tool.
And I'll just piggyback on that. During my demonstration, I showed you the information bubbles, and I showed you that the code itself is referenced in your approval documents. So if you have an installer who's new to solar and he's like, what is that rule? Why does it matter? What does it say? The software gives you the place to go so that you can, okay, this is the code section. It's relevant to this rule. This is why they're asking for this input, and this is what I need to know as the installer. Again, as we pilot this, and typically with our 4 contractors that are familiar with it, their learning curve is over, and they're just busting out permits at this point. Is there a learning curve for your new solar installer? There absolutely is. Like any new product, they're gonna take a little bit more time the first 1 or 2 times they fill out these permits. But between the training and the doing it live, it very quickly becomes very easy to anticipate what's needed with each question. Again, the first permit, you might need to send an email or two and get an answer from the SolarApp team. Once you've done it and you're clear on it, I would say 98% of it is crystal clear. most installers, if they do solar, they know what the input is being asked for.
And I guess the last aspect of that that came up for me while Michael was talking is, sometimes the follow-up question we get is, are we just adding a bunch of questions to jurisdictions? Like, are jurisdictions just going to end up with a bunch of questions from installers? And ideally not. Ideally, well, not just ideally. SolarApp is here. We're here to answer those questions. And if jurisdictions do start getting in questions from installers, we encourage them to direct them to us. Like, we're here to answer those questions and help make that process easier. We don't want to add onto the load for jurisdictions.
Oh, Emily, in the chat, a link to the documents for advocates who want to approach local government. I'm not sure we have it in a linked format.
Yeah, I would say reach out to our team email that is on the screen here, and we can share them directly with you via that email. We'd be happy to. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have it in a linked format yet, but that's a great question and something that we should probably work on as a team.
I also put my personal email in there. Feel free to reach out to me if you just, want to direct it to a person and make sure that it's going somewhere. I understand that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Brad, did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, code cycles changing, the nature of it being somewhat to interpretation, etc. I see it as a super valuable tool for everyone involved, just to bring up the general understanding of code and to get everyone on the same page and to be executing projects just to the highest quality and meeting all the code. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
All right, looking at the top of the hour here, if you had a question that we weren't able to answer, we have the team SolarApp email. Katie put her individual email on here, and you can always reach out directly to MREA info@montanarenewables.org. Make sure you get connected. And that's the purpose. That's a big part of why MREA is focused on education, is we could be learning about SolarApp and technical tools like this together for the betterment of the industry and all the stakeholders involved. So we're very grateful to Katie, Emily, and Michael. Thank you so much for taking your time. And a few points here, just so everyone's got our housekeeping announcements. There we are. So this week with MREA, if you're interested in doing more with us and engaging on some of our educational presentations, tomorrow at noon, MREA is presenting with Climate Smart Montana, and the topic is what's the deal with DERs. So that's noon tomorrow. And if you're in the Helena area, MREA is offering a workshop called Considerations for Going Solar, where I'm featuring our guest Matt Goodrow with Solar Montana here in Helena. And that's a part of the Sun Run happening on Saturday. So more about that on MREA's social media pages. And if you support work like this, so we can bring in guest speakers, we can have this type of dialogue here in Montana, I encourage you to become members or invest in the Montana Renewable Energy Association. This is a big part of what we do day in and day out. And you're part of the reason that makes that possible. So with that, we will bid you all adieu. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope to see you next month. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.